Hello.
Hello. Hi, everyone. Thank you
Hi.
so much for joining us tonight. I am with the amazing Natalie Erika James, director of Relic. My name is Alex Chester. I am the editor-in-chief and founder of Mixed Asian Media. I currently am in New York City on what is the unceded territory of the Canarsie people and the Lenape people. A little visual description. I have shoulder length, dark purple hair with bangs. I am of half Japanese heritage, so I have dark brown almond-shaped eyes, and my skin tone is kind of tan-ish. I'm in a black tank top with some gold chains, and I have a lovely blue ombre wall behind me. Thank you so much for joining us, Natalie. I will let you introduce yourself for everyone here.
Yeah, definitely. Thanks for having me. So yeah, I'm Natalie Erika James. I'm the director of Relic and the co-writer as well. My pronouns are she and her, and I'm speaking to you from Melbourne or Narm, which is on unceded Wurundjeri land. And I'm also half Japanese and half Australian. So I've got short dark hair. I'm wearing a red top. I'm in my office with butcher's paper all behind me. Yeah, that's visual.
Awesome. Yay, half Japanese. I guess let's get right started. I love the film Relic so much, which is why I can't remember who messaged whom on social media, but I remember seeing that and I was like, oh my gosh, it's written by a half Asian woman. How cool is this? I love horror films. My friends all know that about me. Halloween's like my favorite holiday, so because of all the horror films that come out. So I want to know, how did you get into directing and writing, and specifically this genre of a suspense and horror?
Yeah, I guess filmmaking is something I've been wanting to do since I was like 13. It came very early as a passion for me, and I was always the kid in high school who would bring along like a little handy cam and shoot school events, and I used my art subject as an outlet for these really pretentious short films that I would make, and that was enough to get me into to film school, luckily. But yeah, so it was a very kind of early on, I decided this is what I want to do, and I kind of did the traditional route of going to film school to do that. And in terms of horror, I think, I used to be a really scared kid growing up, and I'd have nightmares, and I think I would sneak into my parents' room until I was 7. But then when I was a teenager, I went to go see I think it was The Others in 2011 with some friends, and yeah, I just loved how it was terrifying, but we all kind of survived together. It kind of felt like the thrill of like a roller coaster ride. And something about that always stuck with me. So yeah, we'd have all these sleepovers. We'd just watch horror films and be scared silly. And I think part of me has always been chasing that thrill, perhaps. And at film school, I think originally I started in more of a dark psychological drama realm, because I think at that time horror didn't have the same, I guess, reputation of being able to be artful as well as scary. I think it was just a different kind of category back then. So I didn't think I was a serious artist unless I was making, drama. But over the course of the 3 years at film school, I slowly was kind of drawn more and more into horror. And by my graduate film was a horror film. So that was the slow descent.
I love that. I think you are part of the generation of filmmakers that are elevating horror films. So it's not just the slasher stuff. It's a whole psychological. It really envelops you and makes you think and makes you question like realities and stuff. So I think that's really cool that you are part of this new, I don't want to call it a new genre, but it's elevated and it is very artful now as well, I have to say. And Relic is very artful.
It gets a lot of flack, that term, elevated genre, whatever you want to call it. I think it's so open and fluid now, and I love, the kind of cross genre pollination that happens a lot. So yeah, it's great.
I was wondering, do you think your mixness at all has influenced the work you do, or influenced your career path at all? Because I know for myself, it definitely
yeah. Yeah. I was thinking about that this morning, and I think in several ways, definitely. I mean, maybe on more surface level, the content of what I write can often, because I spent most of my childhood in Japan and China, and in here in Australia as well. I've written 3 films that are set in China, and I'm working on a project that's kind of faux core set in Japan. So the content can be driven by, my background as well. But I think overall the mixedness, it's an interesting one. I feel as though when you grow up half, you have this, strangely, it's like a privilege to be able to inhabit both worlds, but you're also kind of this outsider in both as well, which is an interesting paradox. But it just means that I think you become really attuned to seeing both sides of a story, and naturally kind of extending your imagination to put yourself in someone else's shoes. And I think that relates really strongly to, I guess, the power of storytelling in a way, and particularly film, where at its best, you're put into kind of a state of identifying with the protagonist. It's almost like a dream, it's like causing you to feel these emotions, and that's physiological. So I think there's I feel like the biggest influence of my mixedness kind of implicitly is more of a sensitivity to kind of putting yourself in another person's position, or finding ways to depict an experience that's not your own. A lot of my stuff is personal as well, though. So, it's your own, but it's also other people around you.
Did you find you had a lot of support from your family going into the arts?
Yeah, I would say so. Definitely. Sorry, my parents would cringe if they if they heard me saying otherwise. I think there was a bit of pressure to, I think it always comes from a place of concern. And I remember very distinctly, actually, my dad sitting me down as a teenager and kind of saying, look, you just have to be aware of the fact that the life that, we have built for you, you might not have that if you go down this path, or something to that effect. But I think once they saw that I was really serious about it, they were, completely on board. And they've been great in the sense that to have supportive parents like that, and to live in the same city as them when I was at university, meant I had that safety net. And it's a tough industry to try and get into, and there's a lot of free work that you have to do, and a lot of investing in your own films that you have to do. So you need a certain cushion to be able to do that. And so I was able to just live at home until I was like in my early 20s, and that was kind of they were very comfortable with that. So in that way, like completely supportive. But yeah, my mom will still ask, like, okay, so how much are you making on this job? Like, she's very detail focused. But no, they're amazing. I always say my mom's kind of my muse, because she always somehow tends to inspire projects in me, in something she's observed, or something surrounding our relationship that I draw from. So yeah.
I love that. I was going to ask you, speaking of more of your film experience and getting into it, like how has it been for you as a woman of color? And just, I know how it's still so rare for us to see a woman director succeed. It's getting better, but how has that been, that trajectory for you?
Yeah, it's interesting. I think, like anyone, when you grow up, your parents kind of try and, I feel like they try and protect you and tell you, you try and instill this belief in yourself, right? So I felt like growing up, I was like, yeah, I can do anything. Like, I can be anything I want to be. And I never felt that kind of pushback from people, or that I had to limit myself in any way. But I think definitely once you hit the industry, and even at film school, unfortunately, you start to, it's the gender thing. It's, the race thing. I think it's also like the age thing when you're very young as well. That combination, people don't assume, the assumption of competence often is missing. And so it means that you have to work harder to find those collaborators, those allies who believe in you and, your vision for this project. So unfortunately, I have to report that it's still something you come up against, personally, at least now, which is frustrating. And it's usually people who, again, are casting surface assumptions. And part of me is kind of like, that the work speaks for itself. And it's almost like not rising to the bait of that. But part of me would also love to just be able to tell people to fuck off. Sorry, am I allowed to swear? I'm not sure. I think it's an ongoing thing, but over time you also just surround yourself with the people who you just connect with and are on the same wavelength with, and then it no longer becomes an issue. But yeah, I would be lying if I said it's something that has never, hasn't affected me. And on the flip side, I by chance entered the industry and was trying to get Relic made at a time when people were actively trying to, boost up female directors. And so some of the first funding I got through a government funding program in Australia was a program called Gender Matters, where they selected 50 projects by, the triad of like writer, director, producer had to be 2 out of 3, had to be female or non-male. So that's kind of, I think the timing of when I came in has worked in my advantage, but there's certainly obstacles along the way.
Yeah, it's so interesting because I feel like, at least from someone who's an actor, I feel like a lot of times they want someone that is very green so we can mold you and shape you. But a director is like, well, you have to have like 20 years of experience, and it's interesting. Right? It's very interesting. Let's talk. Yeah, I think the industry is slowly changing, but it's never changing fast enough, in my opinion. But you are at the forefront of that change, and I think that is so awesome. And I'm really excited for like the younger generation coming up to see people like you paving the path for them. I just think that's really neat.
Yeah, no, that certainly excites. The prospect of that excites me as well. And I remember being younger and looking up to directors like, Karin Kusuma, for example, or like even someone like Mary Herron. Like I loved American Psycho as a teenager, and the fact that it was a woman who directed that, I think, does something to you psychologically. It just carves out that possibility for you in your head. So, yeah.
Absolutely. I would love to talk more about Relic. So where did this come from? Is it based on experience? I have to say, I found this storyline not only terrifying, but so heartbreaking. Not one that usually cries at movies, but I found myself really tearing up because I connected to it on such a personal level, since my grandmother's dad's side is dealing with dementia. And it was just like, oh my God, especially that final scene, it just, spoiler alert for everyone if you haven't seen it. But yeah, it just, oh my God, it was like a punch to the gut. Yeah, I would love to hear about like, on
no, I'm really sorry to hear that. The lived experience is truly horrible, of seeing a loved one be in the grips of something like Alzheimer's or just dementia in general. I mean, as you can imagine, it came from a really personal place. My grandmother had Alzheimer's for a number of years, and I'm sure I've told this story. Anyway, I mean, I was just going to say that it's funny because you tell the story again and again, and then you kind of feel like it loses its like meaning, but it's true. And anyway, just a little observation. basically, yeah, I hadn't seen my grandmother who lived in Japan for a couple of years, and I had meant to go see her earlier, but it was a trip that I'd been putting off for whatever reason. And by the time I finally got over there, unfortunately, she couldn't remember who I was, and I think the guilt of that, you know, of putting myself above the time that I could have spent with her, really made an impression on me. And at the same time, she lived in this house that, to me as a kid, I mentioned I was a scaredy cat, always freaked me out at nighttime because it had this like kind of attic-y upstairs space that was always full of things. And yeah, it used to just terrify me to be there. And so somehow the combination of the two things, this kind of disease that was slowly taking over her, both, you know, mentally, and there was also, you know, a marked physical decline as well. That and this childhood nightmare of mine of this scary house kind of came together. And I think the first kind of image of the film was this idea that, you know, my grandmother would kind of start to hoard things as the Alzheimer's got worse. And so that the idea that the space that she hoarded her things in could kind of grow inwards, and that the house was kind of like representative of her mind in a way, and her memories that she was slowly losing. So yeah, that's where it came from.
Wow. I don't know. I like I said, I connect to it definitely on a personal level, and I'm sure many other people do as well. But I can see how, I also recently hadn't seen my grandmother on my dad's side in years. And I finally saw her, and I think she's still, I couldn't quite tell if she knew who I was or wasn't, but it was like, oh man, did I just totally fuck up here, not making an effort just because of like family drama, as there is sometimes. But
yeah,
I've always been terrified of not knowing who I am as a person. And I think that it does make the best horror films in a lot of ways.
Yeah. It's like a existential horror in a way. Yeah. And I also felt like the idea that she was, you know, at points it felt like she was kind of living into timelines, because she would, you know, whether it was like talking to people who weren't there or like were deceased, it kind of felt very almost like ghost logic, right? Like, what is a ghost if not like the past intersecting with the present in a way? So yeah, the idea of building a horror film around that was there from the start.
As I said, I love this film. Everyone should definitely watch it. It's so good. I would love to know, like, as a director and writer, just from how involved do you get to be in the casting process? I also find that so
it's you are definitely you know, at the forefront of the casting process for sure. You know, some directors write with cast in mind. I haven't done that for any of my projects so far, but yeah, I mean, for something like Relic, it was the case that we were going with offers instead of scouting. So it was more of a creative conversation that I was having with, you know, our casting director and my producers, and the question of, you know, do we pull someone from outside of Australia as well? And so there was a whole bunch of things, and the fact that they had to kind of feasibly play a family, and it's kind of becomes a bit of a shifting puzzle in a way. But I think we decided to cast Edna first, and Robyn came up, you know, almost immediately because she is such a kind of force in Australian theatre. She's considered, like, I think someone wrote an article about how she's the first lady of Australian theatre, and she is like just legendary. So I was able to meet her, and both Emily Mortimer and Bella Heathcote. It was mostly just about one-on-one kind of, because I'd obviously seen their work and was a massive fan of all three of them. And so it was more I think you get a good sense of someone from how, you know, whether you can work together for one, and also their kind of demeanor and their ideas about the script as well, and what they actually connect to in the script too. So yeah, all three of them were, I think, had a particular relationship with grief in the family that they were excited about exploring in themselves too. And they were just lovely people, and we all got along really well. So yeah, that was quite straightforward from a casting sense. And then all the kind of peripheral characters, you know, it is a three-hander film. We just did the traditional kind of scouting and auditioning process.
I do love how like it's almost a holistic approach you have to the casting for this film, which I think is very unique. And I like the fact that you were just you were talking to them and finding connection. And I think that's really cool.
Yeah,
I'm not sure how. I feel like it's you out here. It's almost you have to be at a certain level, if that makes sense, for that to take place. Or it's like, oh, I'm a an indie filmmaker, so I'm going to hire who I know because I know they won't let me down. They're reliable. But I think this is really cool. Be like, hey, let's talk. Let me tell you about this, and let's really find out if you are connected to this piece. And I think that's really unique and a really something.
Yeah. I mean, I think there's also practicalities, like industry practicalities when you like. It's a little bit gross, the film industry. You know how they. The sense of like profile that you need to cast so that you are having so that basically like sales agents or distributors can sell the film in different territories, and there's a whole other side of it that's not as personable and one-on-one that factors into it, and you just hope that you can hit that balance of finding someone that you truly creatively connect with and want and are excited by for the role. But also, unless it's like a discovery role or whatever it is that has that level that you need for the budget of the film you're making. I think that's one thing that is a reality of the industry that I certainly had to kind of get my head around as well. But yeah, for better or worse, I don't know.
I had a question and I lost it. Maybe it'll come back to me, but I was going to ask also, is there a favorite scene? Is there a favorite moment that you had directing in this film?
Yeah, I think so. I have two, maybe so one of them was the scene where Edna buries her photos in the forest. It's kind of her last lucid moment before things kind of unravel in the house. And yeah, I really, it was a scene that we really struggled with. I think I rewrote it the night before we shot it, after workshopping it with Robyn a bit, and just to find something a bit more truthful. I think in the writing of it, it was very difficult because it was, it's just personal. It brings up a lot for yourself. And I remember being behind monitor that day and like bowling between takes, and it was like, hopefully it means you're touching on something that's truthful or real or something, but that scene in particular was a tough one, but very rewarding at the end of it. And it's probably the scene, apart from the end, where it still kind of makes me like, you get that pull in your stomach or whatever it is. And then I also loved the tug of war through the hole in the wall that we did. Something about that scene and the kind of the stunt choreography after that was probably like our biggest day on set in terms of crew and in the studio. And my family came to visit that day as well, so it was just like we were on a high that day, it felt like. So yeah, that scene as well.
I remembered what I was going to ask you. Have you found that as a director and writer, you're able to maintain your work, meaning that like producers aren't coming in and being like, you have to change X, Y, and Z if we're going to work with you. And I guess if you have come across that, how are you navigating that? How are you able to negotiate so that you can still keep what you believe in and what you want in the narrative?
Yeah. It is a real balance, I'll say. I think unless you're making a film at a very a smaller budget or like a micro budget, or if you're, I don't know, Alfonso Cuarón or whoever, like unless you're those kinds of a person a proven director, as they call it, who has the sway to kind of have their final cut. For a first film, I would at that budget level, it would be very rare to be given complete kind of creative control. Having said that, it's also the thing I found that you can't avoid the notes. I think you just have to learn to see them as not something prescriptive, but more like a discussion or like a starting point for a discussion. And I certainly, it's almost like I have a bit of a background doing commercials, and that is kind of much more in the realm of like constant, negotiation and compromising, but that's their product, right? And making a massive film is weirdly similar if they're paying for it, but then you're also like, but I care about this so much, this is my baby. Whereas an ad, you're kind of like, okay, like this is selling your product, no worries. So yeah, I think it's just learning, when to pick your battles. And I think as the director, you are basically the keeper of like the story. And as long as the story is intact and you have to like defend the story to every, to the death. But if it's smaller things that, don't necessarily, sometimes it's just like a visual preference. You can fight back, of course, tooth and nail, but there's definitely like pushback if you're constantly like, no, I refuse. And that's when you get, this is what I mean about the balance, right? Like you have to be seen to be, collaborative, at least. And, it's tricky, like, but at the same time, I think if you find the right producers and, they really believe in you and they're willing to talk it through, I kind of enjoy the challenge of interrogation in a way, like it's I mean, not always, but there is something nice about within reason having to defend your decisions and be able to like convince someone of that is kind of, there's a certain kind of I guess it's like a discipline in that. I mean, I even noticed it, like I was addressing some notes last week for a script where, you first get the note and you're kind of like, do we have to? And then it's like, it is kind of like challenging you a bit. And, in this particular case, it led to a better scene and finding something new that we hadn't expected. So I guess that's what I mean by like rising to the challenge of the note or whatever it is. Sometimes they're terrible though. Like let's be real. Yeah.
Oh, this person has to wear pink, bright pink.
Yeah.
Yeah. This is a great segue then to ask you, like, what are you working on now? What's next for you?
Oh yeah. I'm doing I think next up will be a film called Apartment 7A, which is a kind of a horror film I'm doing with Paramount. It's my first like studio project, which is cool. And yeah, we're just starting the casting process at the moment. So it's kind of early days, but it's also kind of gearing up as well.
You must be so excited. Congratulations.
Yeah, thank you. Yeah. Yeah, stoked.
Can you talk a little bit about the film and all the script, or is that just like you just probably signed like 20 NDAs?
Yeah, I think the plot maybe is under wraps, but I can talk about my other project, Drum Wave, which is the Japanese folk horror I mentioned earlier. And yeah, that one we're just about to do another draft on too, and it's about the fear of, I guess, surrounding motherhood or fertility in a way, which is very relevant to maybe our like age range, the kind of different pressures that start to come in, and the kind of body horror elements as well. I feel like people don't really talk about how terrifying it is to grow something in your body. But more than the physical, I think it's also about a kind of fear of like, there's something about the birth of your child that makes your own mortality like very sharply brings it sharply into focus. So yeah, that's fun, and it's kind of within it takes British folk horror conventions, but within the world of Japanese mythology instead. So
yeah, that sounds so cool. I really look forward to seeing this. Yeah, as someone who is like going through the I think I want a kid now sort of thing, it's like actually growing something inside of me is terrifying, right? That is like, oh my God, it is a horror film.
Yeah. And, I think like a lot of pregnancy horror has, it's been made throughout the decades. There's so many examples of, pregnancy horror, but a lot of the time it tends to be directed by men, traditionally. And the assumption is that like the baby is the menace, right? And that there's, it's always an assumption that the child is wanted, and that the mother is this like kind of almost mother of Jesus type like saint or something who's being preyed upon. Whereas my film's a bit more like, what if you don't even want the child kind of thing? So yeah, a little bit more from the female perspective.
I love that. It's much needed to have these films from the female perspective. Sometimes I wonder when I watch certain TV shows or films that I do enjoy, but I'm like, I wonder how this would have been spun differently if through a female gaze versus a male. So so I guess that also leads me to other questions of like, what do you like to watch? Since you are a director, what do you enjoy? And there's no answer. I personally enjoy trash TV sometimes. I love 90 Day Fiance. So
I definitely watch. I mean, as you'd expect, I do watch a lot of horror, and part of what I watch is for research as much as, I mean, it's research and enjoyment as well. I think generally my taste is my tastes are very broad, but probably my favorite is a kind of slightly surreal psychological horror drama, kind of usually from a female perspective, which is what I endeavor to make. So that probably tells you something. But I love a lot of genres. Like I love if I want to relax, I'll watch comedy or horror. There's something about horror that's like very like almost like you understand the rhythms of it, so it's calming in a way, like you know what to expect. But I love sci-fi as well, just straight drama. Like I actually I feel like even what am I trying to say here? I can't even remember. Oh, good. I mean, look, comedy, sci-fi, drama, thrillers. I watch, anything that's like fast. I think for me, what's key is like a point of view. And so maybe thrillers that don't have anything beyond the actual like thrill element, and don't have anything strong to say, probably not my thing. But there's always like enjoyment of the craft as well. I'll watch anything kind of.
Do you have a favorite horror film?
Ooh, that's so tough. I think probably like the classics, like The Shining or Don't Look Now. I also really love, my favorite Asian horror, I reckon, is Pulse or Cairo. by Kurosawa Kiyoshi. And it's like it was made in like 2001, maybe. It's great. You guys should check it out.
I will definitely have to check it out. A few of my friends and I, we always like tend to watch horror films maybe once or bi-weekly, just because it's fun.
Oh, cool. Yeah.
Goes to my list of things that we have to watch.
Do you subscribe to Shudder?
Used to. I'm thinking about resubscribing. We'll see.
Mm-hmm.
There's so many streaming platforms now.
Mm. Oh yeah, totally.
Yeah, it's just like, oh my gosh, it can almost be a little overwhelming of how many streaming platforms. I was wondering, it seems like you are so busy, and how do you balance your life? What does your self-care look like?
That's a really good question. I always really love listening to other writers, like writing, routines and schedules and stuff. But mine, the sad reality is at the moment, Melbourne's in lockdown. So I have just stuck my head into work and just, I think I should probably bring in a little bit more self-care at this point, but that's fine. But generally speaking, over the years, like it's definitely the type of career path particularly with writing that has to be very disciplined. Otherwise, you just like my previous approach used to be to just you have a deadline, and then I would panic up until that deadline, and then like churn it out in the last few days. Now, that's just not sustainable. So now it's a little bit healthier. The big thing that I kind of was a bit of a change for me over the lockdown last year was that I joined a writing group. So much like this, we write on Zoom for maybe 4 hours a day, and it'll be either 45 minutes of everyone's muted and we write, and then we take 15-minute breaks, or we'll do longer hour-and-a-half chunks. And that's been, so amazing. It's not necessarily that we share, problems in the work or we workshop anything together, but it's just to have that community to and accountability, sometimes you put your phone in the background so you can't jump on social media or whatever. But generally speaking, there's just a few things that I've started doing over the years that help me, at least. I definitely do I don't know if you know the Julia Cameron's The Artist's Way. But I do those morning pages, which, I think is great, and kind of gratitude journaling as well. Meditating, I'm really slack with meditation, so I only do 10 minutes, but I do it daily. And then I actually do a bit of Japanese practice as well. So I'll listen to podcasts, and I'm trying to, improve my kanji writing. So I'll do that in the morning too. And that's just a really simple way to get my brain ticking. And then exercise. So I'm really into boxing. So I've been doing that over Zoom recently. So those 4 things: meditation, journaling, language, and exercise. Probably takes 2 hours. That's my morning routine. And then, and then writing wise, I currently have been using the Pomodoro kind of timer technique. So it's 25 minutes on, 5 minutes off. And that's been working quite well. And somehow writing down your sessions feels like it keeps you in line of how many pages you've written against which time. It gives you a sense of how fast you can write for the future. So those kinds of things have been helpful for sure.
It sounds very well-rounded, very balanced. I think
it took many years to develop, I have to say. It was, it's again, I feel like most filmmakers at a certain point hit that burnout, because it is so, so time intensive, money intensive, and, you don't always, your expectations for things can be so high. And then I feel like everyone has this roller coaster. And if you don't have a point in your career where you feel I should quit this and do something else. It's like, that's a very rare filmmaker, I think.
I think that is incredibly rare in the entertainment industry not to have those thoughts. If you don't have those thoughts, then you are very fortunate.
Yeah. I always worry for that person though. It's like, how much fucking confidence do you have, right? Like, anyway, yeah, it's like too much. Tone it down. Yeah, no, it's natural, but I think. Oh, sorry.
No, go ahead.
Oh no, I was just gonna say it's so natural, but the more that like we can talk about these things openly, it just feels like you're not alone in that, right? Like that you're, everyone's in the same boat, and like I think that's really the joy of community, really, and things like this. Yeah.
Yeah, I have to say I have definitely found that community is one of the most important things for me as a person that helps run this magazine and festival and an actor. Community is incredibly important. Without it, it can be a very, very lonely journey, as I'm sure you know as well, especially with the entrepreneurial spirit of like, I have an idea, I'm going to make it and I'm going to create it. It's going to happen. And it can be very lonely. So community is very important.
Yeah, completely. And just the perspective of knowing that you will despair and you will hate it, and that's okay. Like that's almost necessary to get through to like the other side. I think that and people to vent to is very helpful.
I think normalizing that not everything's going to be perfect is something that is really important. And because I feel like, especially with, social media, a lot of times people only post the happy things, the amazing things, and booked and blessed, but we don't see the other side of like, I'm really struggling today. Oh my God, I'm really tired, et cetera, et cetera.
Yeah.
Because that's just not what social media
100%.
is. So
yeah,
I think it's so important to have these conversations. We're almost out of time, so I would love to wrap this up with asking you, like, and I'm stealing this question from Michaela, the festival producer. It's a great question. If there was a Marvel origin story created about you, what would be the key scenes, characters, and conflicts?
Oh my gosh, that is huge.
Question. I was like, I'm doing this.
You're gonna give me like an existential crisis. Holy shit. I think one of the driving things for me was Marvel backstory. I grew up with a dad who was quite ill, and that has influenced a lot of how I see the world, I suppose. So that would probably be my my origin kind of angst. And yeah, I don't know. I mean, I think it's interesting conflicts, and if you look at your own work, you can kind of see the trends in the themes and stuff. And I think that sometimes it's like an uncomfortable mirror of your own neuroses or whatever. I obviously have like a preoccupation with death and impermanence, but that's not for me. It's I feel like making Relic has really, in a way, helped me work through those kinds of things. And my view on that now is one of, I don't know, I kind of see impermanence as like something to be treasured, or like it makes our lives more precious because of it, or something like that. I also see in my work the trend of characters who feel like there's something like monstrous inside of them. So take what you will from that. But yeah, I hope that was exposing enough.
I appreciate your honesty.
Yeah, no worries. Yeah.
Thank you. Thank you so much. This has been such a wonderful conversation. And I just want to encourage all of our viewers to go watch Relic, follow you, because I just know you are going to continue to do amazing, amazing things. And I can't wait personally to see where you are in the next like 5 years, where your career takes you.
Thank you so much, Alex. And thanks for, seeking me out and inviting me. And this is such a wonderful festival, and you, clearly have organized a wonderful community around yourself. So thanks so much.
You're part of the community now, so whatever we can do to help elevate you, just let me know. And that's really with anyone in this community. We're here for each other, and that's what's important. Where can we find you on social media, or are you private on social media in case someone wants, I want to follow her?
Oh yeah, I only have an Instagram. It's just Natalie E. James. Yeah, I'm pretty patchy with social media these days. It's the writing schedule, it interferes. Yeah.
Great. Well, thank you so much. This was, like I said, a lot of fun. And it's morning where you are?
Yes. Yeah. It's noon. So very, very respectable. Yeah.
Okay. Well, I hope you have a wonderful rest of your day. And have a lovely evening. Thank you. And thank you everyone for watching. Up next, we have a networking event on the fun platform Gather. You're welcome to join us as well, Natalie. You get to create these little virtual characters that kind of look like out of a Legend of Zelda.
Cool.
It's very cool.
Awesome.
So I hope to see people there, and we can chat more and just say hi. So thank you all so much, and thank you, Natalie.
Thanks so much. See you guys.
Bye.